Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining me once again on this Reverse Recruitment 0% Growths LTC. We have another Q&A on our hands, so of course I had to bring back our resident Radiant Dawn Wizard.
Yes, hello, it's me again, ViciousSal. Glad to be back, and I'm hoping to be of service once again.
Sweet, welcome back. We're beginning by just briefly showing Raphael's stats. I forgot to do this in 3-5. They almost don't matter. The resistance stat is the only thing of note here. Yeah, that actually does come into play later, but not this map.
You'll see it soon enough. Pause the video if you want to see the actual stat. I actually even missed it just now.
Well, if you really want to know Raphael's attack speed, go and check it out. So we're on map 3-7. We are back in control of Ike's crew, the quote-unquote guerrilla mercenaries. And the objective is survive for 12 turns. So there's no alternate win condition here. There's no way to defeat the boss and speed things up. We're just here for 12 turns. And while we could easily be passive and just sit in this top right corner and do nothing, we actually, because of this generous turn limit, have an excuse to achieve some side objectives. So we are going to be actively doing stuff for all those 12 turns.
Yeah, it's actually quite cool how this map can be played really passively, and then it's obviously quite boring. However, if you choose to actively go for some side objectives of your own, you can really get creative with the map. And of course, there's also the second playthrough stuff that you can do on this map, which everybody pretty much knows about by now.
Yep, we do have access to that. We did start from a clear data save. So one of the things we want to do is we want to bring Ike all the way down to fight the Black Knight, Zelgius in the lower right corner. They both have to live, even the Black Knight, which in vanilla gameplay there are ways, and maybe in reverse recruitment to not 0%, but there are ways to kill him, which is funny.
Yes.
But
it's most likely Haar with the hammer or Boyd with the hammer. Those
yeah.
often come to mind.
So one of our side objectives is for Ike to face the Black Knight. Another is for Geoffrey to reach level 20. And what this does is it allows him to receive a level of bonus experience, and that will let him promote without the usage of Master Crown. I think he has to dodge that hit, and then for the rest of the map, his survival was pretty trivial to accomplish.
Yes, it's with, of course, bonus experience. For some reason, for Flashing Fire, we couldn't get it to work, whereas my file with the same data actually does manage to negate level ups with bonus experience. Like I don't get any stats and he does, which is really strange. However, a promotion, of course, to level 20 gives stats regardless, because the class promo bonuses were not changed in reverse recruitment 0%.
Yep, those promos are pretty valuable. And here we have another target for promotion via level up. So say hi to Marcia, or Marcia, however you pronounce that. She is a lot like Nephany in terms of combat stats, but she flies. And obviously flight is good. We've seen Nephany do a lot of work from her promotion. Also joining us here is Nialucci, who is blazingly fast, but only has an attack value of 33, which is not terribly impressive, and we don't really have enough time to work on his strike rank. So he's mostly just a filler combat unit, really, really hard to hit, honestly, even when untransformed. So he can take on a few dangerous rolls here and there, which is nice.
The Wild Heart is actually vanilla. Janaf also comes with that.
So we have 2 units that we want to train to level 20. Those are Geoffrey and Marcia. We are also kind of working on getting Haar to level 10. The rationale being maybe we want to promote him in 3-8. So, of course, to do that at level 10, you need a Master Crown. And the way we would get that is in 3-6, we gave Peleus a very suspicious-looking inventory. And among those items are a Master Crown, or is a Master Crown. So he has been stripped of his weapon and is no threat on this map, so we can just get Heather down to him and leisurely steal all the stuff on his person.
I mean, is it even stealing in that case? Isn't he just practically handing it away? He probably just got told by Izuka, like, hey, you should give all your stuff to that very nice lady over there.
Yes. Blame it on Izuka. Classic.
For the sake of Dayan.
Right. Okay, I think that covers all the objectives. We've got survive 12 terms for the primary objective. We've got train 2 units to level 20 and 1 to level 10. We've got steal Peleus' inventory, and we've got engage the Black Knight with Ike. I guess the final thing I'll mention here is that Kieran and Makalov are off in the corner being pals. They're building support rank, nothing else.
Yes, and one thing we forgot to mention, on the first turn you may have seen Raphael using an Allevi Grass. Just a reminder, Raphael still has Raisin's Vigor, so he actually transform as quickly as possible.
Okay, with that, I think that basically covers like the map itself. The rest of it is just like the process of accomplishing all of those goals. So I think we're ready to get into questions. Starting with Panda Money's question, do flyers get terrain bonuses from anything other than clouds, like in 2 Prologue?
I do not think so. I haven't checked this because I was away for a weekend, and I didn't really prepare this beforehand, shame on me. However, I do not think there were any other tiles that actually implement this other than clouds, with terrain bonuses that actively aid flying units. However, if there is someone who knows something more than me, please do tell me in the comments. And something I actually also would like to know, what's everyone's favorite Marcia creative swear word or just exclamation?
Oh man, I love Marcia's dialogue so much.
Yes. Shut it, monkey brain, or whatever else she says.
Yeah, she's got,
it's great.
Cheese breath is in there. Lizard monkey, I think. Or maybe that's...
Yes.
Okay,
Dragon
like
backers.
Dragon backer, yeah. It's
crackers, of course.
Crackers.
Yeah. Yes. Let us know your favorites in the comments.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
So back to the questions. Another question by Panda Bunny was, could any of the village items have been worth losing a turn for in 2-1?
So in 2-1, the items you can get from the villages are an Asherah icon, which is like in vanilla. In the top house, in I think the left house, there's an Allevi Grass instead of the Steel Axe. In the bottom right, I want to say, there's a Spectre card. And then in like the middle lower house, there is a Wild Heart scroll, and in the bottom left house, there's a Pure Water. So none of these items are like, worth dying for or losing turns for. They're like nice to have, and in a casual playthrough can be fun to use. But when your only 2 units are Lagoos with limited time in their transformation gauge, you really don't want to spend excess time, chatting up the locals for stuff like that. The Asherah icon, I guess, would be the most valuable of those because you can sell it for 4,000 gold or use it to like reduce crit rate against some of your combat units, maybe. Like Ike has a really low base luck relative to his level. Panda Bunny on a roll today. Is fire magic effective against doors, like the one in 2-3?
The answer is no. However, this might be for someone who's going to mod Radiant Dawn in. Eventually, this might be a fun thing to include. Seems reasonable, although I think it would mostly be weird with the animation because I don't really see a door. Like, I get the idea of the door burning down, but we don't have an animation for that. It's just the doors swinging open, and I don't see fire magic doing that specifically. But I get the idea. Going for 4 in a row, will Oscar, Boyd, and Rolf ever perform the Three Brothers Triangle attack, also by Panda Bunny?
So, I like the idea, but sadly, no, it's just not practical to do that. So, the way you execute this triangle attack, for those who maybe don't know, is that once Oscar is promoted to tier 3, he can wield bows, and at that point, Oscar can wield a bow, Rolf can wield a bow, and Boyd can wield a crossbow. And if you position them all, I think within 2 range of an enemy, the same enemy, then you can activate their triangle attack, which is an auto crit, I want to say.
Yes, it is. It actually even bypasses a few things like, I believe, Mantle or Fortune as a skill.
Mantle.
Although I don't know Fortune for sure, as it probably doesn't really come up. I haven't seen anyone try this out on a tier 3 mech, but for the sake of it, it probably does bypass it, as Wrath also, at least in Path of Radiance, had some of those weird interactions where it just gave 50 crit.
So that's the triangle
like
attack.
it's like in the equation of how crit is calculated, it's just slapped on after everything else.
Right. Like the outcome is as if you had hit a crit, but it's not like actually calculated the chances the same way.
Yes, I think so.
Okay. So that requires, in this context, in our playthrough, an investment into Oscar, who replaces Geoffrey. And it never really comes up. Like, you have to position them in a certain way. You have to have, like, an enemy that needs that kind of damage to kill. And it's just not practical. So it would be funny, especially, like, if I could stick that in a tightly scripted video and make a joke about it or something like that. But sadly, no. And then following that up from Panda Money, like, how do you activate the triangle attack in a reverse recruitment context where your units are swapped around?
Yeah, so this was alluded to by Flashing Fire just a moment ago already, because he mentioned Oscar and Boyd and Rolf themselves.
I spoiled it.
Yeah, you did. No, just as before, all data regarding Rolf, Boyd, and Oscar gets transferred to, instead of their own PIDs, so the person IDs Oscar, Boyd, and Rolf, it gets transferred to Geoffrey, Kieran, and Stella, or that's her internal name, so Astrid. And their skills, which one of them is the triangle attack skill, is also kept to them. So that skill stays with the data of Rolf, Oscar, and Boyd, but it's now on PID Geoffrey, PID Kieran, and PID Stella, which is Astrid. So they still retain their own skills, and thus the brothers and also the other triangle attack users, they all keep their own. It's not Kieran, Geoffrey, and Astrid somehow doing the triangle attack. So we're going with more Panda Bunny. Also, thank you for all the questions. It's really fun to be able to talk about this, so keep them coming. How do, or rather, would it have been more useful to send Brave Lance to Ike's army rather than keeping it with Oscar?
Yeah, so at this point in time, so the 3.9 video is not up yet. That's kind of where this would affect a lot of things, and I'll leave the reveal, so to say, for that video, but I can talk about the thought process behind whether to send a powerful item like that to a different army or not, because we have an allegory for that in terms of the Brave Sword, which I sent with Ina to Ike's crew. And the thought process there is, okay, suppose I keep the Brave Sword with Laron and Renning and stuff. Renning becomes like the only sword user that can really make use of it because Tanith pieces out for a long time. And as we've seen in 3-6 already, Renning gets the Amidi, which is just a better Brave Sword that never runs out and is locked to his inventory. So he doesn't need it. So the Brave Sword will not make a very big impact in that army. Whereas in Ike's crew, we have Ike, who has good speed, but not like the best, and very good strength. So the Brave Sword is a tool that he can use to accomplish things that he otherwise normally couldn't, whereas you can't say the same about Renning. So it's finding a place where that weapon will have the most impact given the tool set of an army. And in this case, that meant sending the Brave Sword along. With the Brave Lance, we'll just have to wait and see.
So we're going to the next question.
Cool.
Why did Heather not look for the coin in this chapter, which was 3 prologue?
Right. So toward the end of 3 prologue, as we get toward the boss, there's like a section above a bunch of trees where there's a coin somewhere around there. I didn't send Heather over there to get it because I'm not using any coins in this playthrough. So the rationale behind that, it's not like a rule. Like, I can still get coins because sometimes like enemies drop them, or I just stand on a tile and it's like, oh, surprise, coin. But I'm not using them because the concept behind a 0% growth run is to eliminate the randomness introduced by stat level ups. And a coin, like the mechanics of it is that when you forge and choose to use a coin, it gives you, or gives your weapon that you're forging a random buff, whether it's to like +1 might, +10 hit, +15 crit, something like that. And you can view that the same way that you can view random stat gains on level up. So I decided for this playthrough, since it's 0% growths, I'm not going to use any coins. I'm not going to introduce that element of randomness into the run. Geoffrey's kind of on a timer to get his EXP because he can't actually ride out beyond this little island here. So we have to have all units come to him, maybe. Okay.
Yeah. Speaking of not being able to get off that island or getting past that island, there is one unit on this map that is tragically stuck, just like a promoted mist in the 4-4 ledges. I don't know if he's been in view yet.
I don't think so.
But we'll see him later on the left-hand side.
Yeah. See if you can spot him before we point it out.
Yeah.
Okay, so no coins. I do eventually sell the ones I get for like 5 gold, so that's funny. On to the next question. Several people noticed that when I was showing off Mordecai, he had bonds with Rolf, Gatry, and Gatry again. What do you have to say about that? Don't die.
Coding magic, ergo I have no clue. Maybe I doubled the PID listings for his bond sports and it actually does trigger. Maybe there are multiple PID Makayas in the game. Some of those are used as dummies. Some of those are used as what are they called? Like the model when Raphael and Makaya hug. That's a separate PID Makaya. It's like PID Makaya 2 or something like that, but it still has the name Makaya. So they look the same on the front end. So maybe there's a second Gatry character ID apparently that I may have just accidentally added in.
Okay.
Other than that, I don't know. Like, just throw it on the pile of mistakes of past me. I mean, the pile is big enough already.
Okay, funny you mentioned that because I realized we forgot to talk about something relating to Marcia. So she can shift, right? Like, anytime she does an action, that option on the menu pops up, which is normally something that only Laguz can do. Marcia's not a Laguz. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes, I actually can. This is something that I have been looking for because she was not the only one. It actually was Nefni as well, and as we have seen, Nefni is not this problem anymore. The first appearance of Nefni, if I recall correctly, is in 3 Prologue, where I don't think there's a cutscene where they pop in. So in 3 Prologue, their character data gets loaded and gets set. However, that's not the map that they're recruited in. That's, of course, later down the line. In 3-4, as it's normally Ranulf.
Yes.
Due to this, their character data is set. However, the character data and the map data still load in at the same time, and they can cause conflicting things to happen. So I changed the character data, which changed Ranulf, PID Ranulf, into Nefni, which is a Bjork unit. However, in the 3 Prologue map, the map data would load in a Laguz, like it loads in PID Lay, which is Ranulf, and then it would also select the class as Cat Laguz Male. And then you suddenly get this character that can shift even though they're a Bjork, and then they change into this weird red-green-white block of tofu. Yes, people that have played reverse recruitment, especially during the playtesting part, even now sometimes it pops up. They can attest to this. The same happened with Marcia, and I couldn't figure out why. Turns out that that one map where Tibarn, Nesala, and Nialuchi, Janaf, and Olki, and all the ravens and hawks fly in and have that little chat on an island, where there's the foreshadowing of Nesala betraying Tibarn and the hawks.
Whoa, spoilers.
In 3-2. That is where the first map model is used. That's an actual map in the game. And that is where Marcia then gets loaded. But since I didn't change that, that's a map that's stored in a different location than the playable maps. I couldn't find it. I just couldn't figure it out. I was looking for it, like, but where is she? Where is she? Other than this, I fixed it with Renolf, and this is how I fixed it. She must pop up somewhere earlier. And I played through the entire game and kept skipping the story, and then suddenly, one day I didn't skip the story, and there it is. That's the map where she gets loaded in as a hawk. Apparently, this is a patch. It still hasn't been fixed. I thought I did. My mistake. So yeah, throw it on the pile as well. All the more reason to remake Radiant Dawn Reverse Recruitment at some point. But yeah, that's how you can have character data and map data conflicting and creating weird scenarios where Bjork can shift and then turn into tofu.
Yeah, so that's a great story. And specifically, it's just when Bjork units replace Laguz units that can happen.
Yes, because if a Laguz changes into a Laguz, then the problem isn't there.
Right.
The same thing actually also happened with Tanith because of Nylan Tanith, and she gets loaded in 1-4 in the back room with all the gold and where you have the CG. Mm-hmm. Same thing applies.
Oh, I'm actually remembering something now. In my first casual playthrough of Reverse Recruitment, I accidentally shifted Marcia on this map. And what that does is not only does it turn her into tofu, it reduces all of her stats to 0, including HP. So she just enters combat, she immediately dies. And I saved, like, for some reason. So I was left with this useless Marcia for the entire rest of the playthrough, which really sucks because I like Marcia. I was very sad.
Well, there's only one thing to say. Crackers.
Oh, dang it. Okay. Yeah, I can imagine, like, being the one to discover those weird quirks of programming can be quite entertaining at times.
Yes, at times it's terrible, and at times it's hilarious.
Okay, dipping back into the questions here, Panda Bunny, the ever-trusty question asker, asks, why can't Bjork units who replace Laguz units have an item to replace the innate Laguz weapon, like their claws or fangs? So, for example, in 3-1, Haar replaced Lyre and had no items in his inventory.
Yeah, so this is actually also related to the entire ID and map loading of characters. With Laguz and their classes, the weapon is tied to their class. The actual class says, when I transform or when I am this class, give me this default weapon loaded into my inventory. It's also immediately equipped and locked. You can't unequip it, of course. Mm-hmm. And those are just the fangs, the breath, all the Laguz weapons. However, when you go into the map files, you actually have a class that gets loaded for the character, and you also have an inventory that gets loaded for that character on that map. This actually also comes into play with replacement units, or whenever, let's say you would give Pelias on this map no weapons, he'd gain a steel sword. Like Zahark, if you don't give him any weapons in vanilla, he gets a steel sword, just so that there is a weapon there for him.
Right.
That all gets loaded on the map data. Whenever the map looks for this, it apparently could have been changed later down the line, but when I was making this, I couldn't figure it out. The inventory isn't listed for Laguz in this case. Like, if they don't have an item like a Vulnerary or an Olivigrass listed, then there is just an empty list entirely. And due to the fact that the weapon is tied to a class and not to that inventory that's then loaded, there is no replacement for that item. So whenever you try to put something in there, it just skips over that item slot and it just doesn't look for it. Which means that Haar and Fiona later down the line, who is the replacement of Tabarn.
Yep.
They come in with no weapons, sadly. This is, however, now fixable in Paragon, so thank you once again, Thane. He actually, like, whenever his program recompiles all the files, it does make it so that those weapons are able to be loaded, which is really great because it's something that can also be improved upon on the current version.
Interesting. Okay. So there's a solution. I just didn't have it when I played through the game. Next question we have here is from both Exod and Ryan in one form or another. Do enemies prefer to target Lagoos in order to deplete their transformation gauge, which would explain some odd attacks we saw in 3-1, for example?
Yeah, it's actually a really interesting question, and I don't know the exact answer. I do have a list of all the AIs that the game has. Of course, they're not actual AIs, but it's easy to call them that. People understand the context. Mm-hmm. There's an entire list. Many of them have names that are really easy to understand. There's like a no attack Jill and Zihark AI for 1-5 specifically, which means that there are a few soldiers and other units that just will not attack them. This is to prevent game overs. Sadly, with things like the randomizer and reverse recruitment, this doesn't always seem to add up, and whenever you restart the map, this gets defaulted, which is a shame. But the idea is there and the intent is there, and you can easily read off many of these. There's also attack move 2 range, which means that as soon as you would enter an enemy's range, that is twice their movement plus their attack range, they would start charging you. So if you would have an infantry unit like an archer with 6 move and a bow, you would have 14 move. If you were in 14 tiles away from them, they would charge you because they'd have 12 move for 6 times 2, and then their 2 range with their bow.
Right.
3 range even if it's a long bow, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
There is no deplete gauge priority AI. However, this does not mean that any of the AIs that have charge and attack the enemy couldn't have this in their programming priority list. This could be the case, but this is mostly just inner workings code in a few of the files that we don't really know and have explored yet. So we know names of certain AIs and how they generally behave, but once those parameters of how they are triggered, like the attack move 2 range or attack move 1.5 range, we know what triggers a shift in their behavior in their AI, but then what they do next and who they target isn't really explored and known. It's Panda Bunny again. Could Calill have died if she hadn't activated Flare numerous times?
Yeah, this is referring to 3-4. So that's one of those maps where Calill has been doing a lot of enemy-phase combat. And like ultimately, yes, if you get unlucky enough, Calill can die. The nature of probability means that, you know, if something can happen, then given enough attempts, it will. But generally, you know, Fire Emblem was like that in a lot of cases. You know, you see a 97% hit rate, you go for it because you think it can't miss, essentially. You know, there's obviously a chance, but it's so low that you don't even have to really think about it too hard. So between like Flare, healing her, Resolve, boosting her Avoid, and Flare activation rate, and Ike support giving her more Avoid, like Calill very rarely dies in the situations we put her in. But of course, it's possible.
I'm Not Pro has a question where he asks, I see that in the original clear of Geoffrey that he gets 1 more level. Does that affect the clear at all? This is regarding 3-5.
Yeah, so, I mean, you can kind of see already how Geoffrey got level 20 right as we were kind of breaching the area he could actually, like, participate in. So if I had used the Calill-centric clear that's in the Premiere video in the full run, it would have been much more difficult for him to get that level 20. So it could have delayed his promotion, which you might be able to work around in 3-8, but you definitely want him promoted by 310. So maybe there's a way around it. Maybe if you had bonus EXP to work with, it wouldn't matter so much. But yes, it would make a difference.
Yeah, good to know. Going back to Panda Bunny, the torches you used on 3-6, were they mostly for a better viewing experience for the people that are currently watching? Or does it also actually help you when playing?
Both. A bit of column A, a bit of column B. So it, of course, does help the audience know what's going on, know what kind of risks are out there. It does the same for me. 3-6 was another one of those maps where I had to play a lot of it straight up and kind of react to what was going on. Like, I had a general plan, and I knew what I wanted to do at certain points in time, but it just helps to be able to see things on the screen and not have to memorize, like, okay, there's some unit in the fog who can attack like this square, and I need to be mindful of it even though I can't see any visual representation of that. So helps me, helps you guys watch. It's good. It's all good.
Yeah, very fair. Then for 3-7, you said that equipping the Black Knight with a lance was exclusively because it was funny. But would it not mean that he would have a one range weapon equipped in 3-7? Then I could attack him from 2 range without risk of dying, thus allowing you to recruit the hidden spoiler character in endgame.
Right. That was actually my original thought process. I was thinking, okay, I'll give him a 1-range weapon so that Ike can just chip him with any old wind edge or something and be done with that. But what I found out, and we'll see this later, is that when the Black Knight starts moving, he will also equip his weapon. So in order for me to pull that off, it would actually require engaging the Black Knight really deep in enemy territory, which I wouldn't really want to try to do without... It might be costly in terms of EXP gain from Marcia and stuff like that. So sadly, it doesn't end up working like that. But the only real downside is that you need to spend 3,000 gold to get a Spectre card, because no enemy in the game can counter those. So honestly, and you could even work around that if you had Volk in one endgame give the Spectre card to Ina. She could transfer that all the way to the mercs, the girl mercs.
Yeah, that would also work. There's actually multiple, like it doesn't even have to be the 1-E one, since in many Spectre cards in the start of the game, or many, at least a few, there's actually one thing I'd like to add. One thing I'd like to add to this, actually.
Sure.
The Zelgius on this map, you'll see at a certain point, he is wielding a lance. However, we will be hovering over him at some point, and you can actually see that he is equipping the Elondite at that point. However, his map model keeps using a spear, which is kind of weird, but maybe it's just that the Zelgius model wasn't really coded that far that he changes model when equipping a sword while originally holding a lance. Because the Black Knight, of course, he has his trident when using a lance as a map model, and his sword generally when wielding his sword. So it's kind of weird that that doesn't happen for Zelgius, but there was no moment in time in the game where it comes into play, I guess, so they didn't code it.
Wrapping up a question that got asked in the previous 2-P video, can you explain why the Black Knight looks like Zelgius? There's a second reason for that.
Yeah, so Zelgius swapping with BK and vice versa, of course, is just a fun little nod and spoiler, I guess, although Heroes did that as well. However, if the Black Knight was included, Ike would not be the midway point anymore, and he'd swap with Calill.
In the rotation of characters?
Yeah,
for reverse recruitment?
exactly.
Yeah, okay, continue.
Yeah, so I did not know at the time how to change the Regnell deals the final blow to Rex Flame deals the final blow. This was a piece of coding mystery to me. So in the end, this really helped with the feasibility of reverse recruitment at the time. It would be a shame if you came all the way to the end and then it's like, yeah, you can't really kill him, you need to bring Ike to the tower even though he's an optional character. So with the fact that the Herons were mainly avoiding, or they were shifting around with themselves to avoid dance trains, and then combining that with the Black Knights being removed from the entire list and that making Ike the fulcrum, that actually was really useful for me at the time and just simplified my job by quite a lot.
Cool.
Okay, well, glad to have that cleared up. Then, going to Seiji McSage, could turns have been saved by removing the no death clause and sacrificing any units?
Okay, so this is always interesting to think about. And to answer that, you kind of have to look at the objectives you're trying to complete and consider whether there's any way a death could contribute to that. So one way is like a unit could rescue another unit and then act as like a meat shield in a particularly dangerous area so that the rescuee can maybe do something next turn. it's hard to really pull that off effectively because you often might need more than just the rescue unit to be doing things. Like if it's a seas map, for example, and you want to get your Caesar close, there's probably a boss you need to kill anyway on the seas point. So it's tough to do that, and it might be more costly than helpful. Like imagine if we had flown Haar up to get Calill in range of people in 3-4, and then Haar dies, and we don't have him around for later stuff, you know? Also, there was Renning over there on the island. Poor Renning. Don't know how he got there. And then, like, route maps, it's pretty easy to see why you wouldn't want to lose units on those maps. There is one interesting case in Radiant Dawn specifically, because the objective of 3-E, the endgame of Part 3, does, like, any unit death counts toward that win condition. So you could, and the speedrun does this actually, the real-time speedrun, you could lose your own units to try to make that go faster, but in an LTC context, you can't just lose more, you have to lose enough to gain a whole turn. So, in summary, I do not think removing the deaths clause, or no deaths clause, would help, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, very interesting. I actually would be interested in the idea of, like, you already skipped Mia, like if there were any other characters that maybe couldn't gotten the axe and be skipped. But for now, we'll actually go forward to Nimbus Alama. If stat gains from BEXP level ups were completely disabled, how much would that impact the run?
Right. So if whatever was wrong with my own patch had been fixed, I guess, you could promote a lot more units to tier 3. That would be the main benefit. For example, we wouldn't have to do all this stuff with Geoffrey and Marcia trying to gain enough kills in this chapter. You could devote that action economy to other things. And then I think you could maybe promote Volk in Part 1 if you wanted to, but it hardly matters because he's just stillness, the character, right?
Yeah, actually a really cool role still, like the fact that
Very
he still
cool.
has something to offer as a portable shine barrier, and also treasure hunting is still, of course, useful.
Oh yeah, he's not done yet.
No. Going to Zandy, how do you figure out what rewards like bonus experience, certain houses to treasure, etc. are worth investing time in? Do you play through an attempt where you get an item, progress the game a bunch, and then compare it to an attempt where you actually skip that item? And how do you decide to use consumables like the Lagoo stones, because those, of course, are a valuable resource?
Yeah, great question. I love this. I really try to avoid replaying chapters if I can. Not just because some of them are long and difficult, but because, like, it just feels unsatisfying to have to redo something that I thought was complete. Some rewards are baked into the strategy of completing a map because I know I need them for future clears. Like, I've done some planning from the end game, because I want to be able to finish the run. And so I'd rather, and even if I don't know for sure if I'll need something, I'd rather get it and see if it comes in handy rather than, like, realizing 15 chapters later that I need it and having to either go back for it or just accept the turn losses. So there's that. If it's not critical, but I can get it anyway, I try to demonstrate that it's possible. And then in terms of Lagoo specifically, the process there is generally I try to complete the map without Lagoo stone uses unless it's very obvious that I need some. For example, 2-1. And then if I'm, like, close to a turn save, I go back and try to see what a Lagoo stone helps me with. But I'm encouraged to use those early because I know that a lot of the Lagoo's units are front-loaded in Reverse Recruitment, and there are enough Lagoo stones awarded to the player through Styles changes that there tend to be enough for me to use them early and kind of not worry too much about it. Okay, we're a bit of a tone shift here. Question from Exod. Who do you think is better between Edward and Leonardo in the English Radiant Dawn hard mode, and why is it Leonardo?
So I think Flashing Fire and I are in alignment on this one. It's obviously Leonardo.
Obviously.
Leonardo only needs to get to level 10 It's a not so contested seal that he needs to promote from level 10 onwards, and then being able to use a bowgun to just shoot stuff out of the sky. You could give him Beast Foe, but if you're using a Nolan or someone else, like, he can do it. He can one-shot tigers or anything that flies. He also can use the ballista in 312. Like, there's quite a few things he can do, and even if he just is barely able to chip in 312, maybe for something that can later get a kill, that would also work. Edward is never going to get close to that kind of contribution on hard mode especially, and once you get Zehark, like, Edward will not be in the same league as Zehark is at that point, so why bother? Even on normal mode, I'd actually slightly edge it in favor of Leonardo because he can reach level 10 more easily, and Edward is still not going to be able to reach Zehark levels of stats. Whereas on easy mode, you easily get that. You get a better, probably, than Zehark unit, and then the wind edges actually give him plenty of power with his stats due to just being way stronger than the enemies.
My thoughts on the subject are a level 1 sniper Leonardo can one-shot dragons in the tower, and that's really funny. Now, from Atomic X 160, what is your favorite Pokemon?
Once again, we're pretty much on the same page. Not entirely, but we both have an affinity for Gen 3.
Gen 3,
people
yep.
might have guessed that mine would be Salamence. It's actually where the Sal comes from.
Oh.
Because my first online username was on Pokemon Forum, and that was Salatri, which was a combination of Salamence and Trico. I later changed to ViciousSal, even though I'm probably quite gentle. I love Salamence. Gen 3 is my jam. I love the trumpets. Platinum and Crystal / Soul Silver are also up there. Shiny Suicune is one of my other favorite Pokemon. Gardevoir is also in the top 3. And I also like the fact that Mence got the boot to Ubers in Gen 4, and then the Mega was busted as well because Aerolate, Intimidate, and that defense stat boost, that was all very, very nice. I just like the design. The Wish Bagon that was given away as an event or something, I also found that really cool because of the entire lore of Bagon trying to wish to be able to fly. Like a bulky Salamence set also works in competitive, underused right now. It's just very versatile, very cool Pokemon.
For my part, Metagross for sure. Again, Gen 3, I like it a lot. But also, like, I like the design. It's pretty sleek. The shiny form is pretty cool. Ironically enough, he shares some qualities with, like, Mordecai in this hack, in that he's like a really tanky bruiser, and I kind of like that style. He's got a signature move in Meteor Mash. It's rare, but not like, event-only rare. So you can actually obtain it in a lot of Pokemon games without breaking the bank. And then the Mega form is kind of neat, but it's not like one of the reasons I like Metagross. So, yeah.
Yeah, Metagross also a very cool Pokemon.
Yep.
I understand why it would be someone's favorite easily.
Another Gen 3 pseudo-legendary. So Sal, I've got one for you actually. You've changed a lot of the, like, logically needed to change items in, like, starting inventories and villages and shops in reverse recruitment, but some changes seem to be just kind of choices, like more blizzards and shineberries and cards. Care to talk about that?
Yeah, it's a quick answer. Mostly variety. You already mentioned that Lagoos are front-loaded. I could just bombard the player with Olivia Grass and with Lagoon Stones, but where would the fun be in that? Especially in runs like these where you really need to have your resource management up to snuff. You can see that there's creative use and a thought process behind every Lagoon Stone use. And I really like the fact that in 3-6, for example, the shine barriers actually came into play. That's just a really cool thing to see, and I was hoping for that kind of stuff. It doesn't always happen in a casual playthrough because you're able to steamroll Deathball a little bit more. But yeah, it's these kinds of things where I really like that it happened, and yeah, it's just a really cool way. The Blizzard Tome, I hope, is also going to make an appearance.
So speaking of creative choices, why did you choose to create the reverse recruitment patch to begin with?
Yeah, actually, it's a question that's kind of tugs at my heartstrings a tiny bit. Radiant Dawn was my first Fire Emblem, so I have big nostalgia bias for it. It's one of my favorite games of all time. I can see its glaring flaws, like the story, of course, has its issues,
True.
but also in gameplay the support system. When I found out Path of Radiance and like how much better the supports themselves were, not really the system, because I like the everyone can support everyone idea and the bonuses it provides. But yeah, there's room for improvement. I actually have parents that one of them did coding as a job, and the other one actually does game design, although it's more for games like chess and checkers, stuff like that. He makes his own games.
Okay.
However, back in the days when I was a teenager, not necessarily rebelling against my parents, but I did have my own interests, and I tried to just become myself. So I didn't really go into their jobs and interests on every single occasion. And then later down the line, lo and behold, I'm interested in changing a game I love into something else, and I need to learn how to code for that. And suddenly I'm in this scenario where I'm calling my mom like, hey, you know those things that you and dad used to do? Yeah, guess what I'm doing currently. So that was a fun thing to realize myself. I just
I
wanted
can relate to that actually a lot.
Cool. I'd love to hear that at some point as well.
Sure.
I wanted to change Radiant Dawn, and I probably said this before, but reverse recruitment seemed like a feasible thing. Of course, at GBA hacks at the time what they offered, and reverse recruitment is a thing where you do the same thing over and over. You swap A with B, and then you swap, or rather A with Z, and then you swap B with Y, etc. Of course, some changes appear, like with Ranulf, Tanith, and Marcia, and them suddenly becoming Bjork and then shifting into Tofu. So there's something new to learn, but the idea of me just doing something, and as soon as I get the hang of that, I can probably finish that project. It seemed way less of an overwhelming project to take on compared to making my own ROM hack or making my own maps and stuff like that. I didn't know what was possible. Hex code, I didn't know anything about it. It was daunting, so this one thing like a good starting point, and I was going to work from there.
Yeah, so you took on something with a relatively limited scope in the hopes of learning how to do more.
And now I have learned how to do a lot more, and luckily more people are getting interested in Dawn itself, and there's things like, well, Paragon and the Exalt script editor, also by Thane. The Serenus Forest hacking notes topic by Vincent ASM, of course, was a great help back in the day. There's plenty of things. Big shout out to Heartless Seth, who had Excel editors before Paragon came along. I still use his FE10 data editor currently. So that was a great help. There's multiple people there that offered help, or things like Dunal had his Redux, which was a project way bigger in scope, which I asked him some questions back in the day, and currently we have some nice sparring sessions because we both work on our own projects that have exceeded the scope of reverse recruitment and his Redux. So yeah, there's plenty of cool stuff that's happening, and I'm really hoping to be able to finish my current projects at some point. But yeah, reverse recruitment was a good start, and I just love editing Radiant Dawn and learning new. Big challenge to learn new things as well.
Cool. Well, thanks for sharing that. To briefly touch on the part I related to, my current job is programming, and my dad has done a lot of programming, and for a while I thought I really didn't want to do programming, but here I am.
Well, I might ask you for some advice at some points, because I have a few things that I act with.
Huh.
Well, then I think we're going into pretty much our final question,
I believe so.
and that is once again by our great friend Panda Bunny. Why did you decide to produce this series? Because we know why I made it, but why did you want to do something with that as a project?
Yeah, getting really deep into it. So, some parallels here between what Sal was talking about. Radiant Dawn is also a game that I played in my formative years as a teenager and stuff like that. So, So I found out about reverse recruitment around the time it was like completed, sometime after, and I enjoyed coming back to it as someone who was starting to learn about quote unquote efficiency in Fire Emblem games, and kind of seeing like how I matured and the game had matured was pretty cool. So I did a casual playthrough, really enjoyed it, you know, transformed Marcia into tofu, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. And then, so previously, before this whole playthrough, I hadn't done any LTCs, but I did a playthrough of Fire Emblem Three Houses, which was the game that allowed me to kind of discover efficient play, and changed a lot of how I think about Fire Emblem and how I interact with people who also play Fire Emblem. I completed a playthrough of that where I killed as few units as possible. And I have that recorded, and it's actually on my channel. I just never made it public, because my original plan was to like commentate it and make a series out of it, and it just never really happened. And so I knew that I wanted to make something kind of like that. And then here comes along this interesting twist on a game that I really enjoyed in my youth and still enjoy now. And additionally, no one had done an LTC for it. And so there's this kind of open space for me to explore the gameplay and like try my hand at this form of challenge run. And then 0% growths, I added that on partially because I liked the idea of reducing the randomness, because I had already played through Three Houses where it was a growth playthrough, and there's a lot of randomness to solve for in that, and I wanted to try reducing that. So that's kind of why I wanted to do the LTC. And then the production angle of it has been influenced a lot by Zoran. If any of you guys watch his videos, they're really, really great, well produced on mainly Fire Emblem Conquest. He does also have a Three Houses playthrough out there. But it's very clear, if you watch any of his videos, that he enjoys the game and he enjoys tackling its unique challenges, and he enjoys talking about what he's doing and sharing with the world. So that kind of, I guess, spirit is something I wanted to carry into this series as well, where it's like, we're having fun with it. Like, there is a challenge here, but we're making it cool, right?
Definitely.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's the summary.
Well, I can only say it's going swimmingly. Also, enjoy the Black Knight Ike talk, which I actually really prefer compared to the Japanese one, because here it actually gives a really cool reason. Instead of, my warp powder malfunctioned and my spirit and armor went to the castle, but my body didn't. Just letting Ike win is narratively way more satisfying.
Agreed.
Anyway, just the production value is great. Also, shout out to Sayanyo, of course, for that, because the thumbnails are absolutely gorgeous every single time.
Yeah, I love them.
And, well, one of the things, and I think I'm not the only one who says this, but I really, really enjoy your outros. They're absolutely fantastic. And just it's a really nice creative spin, and it makes them really memorable for me.
Thank you. That gives me the warm fuzzies. Yeah, that's definitely something I wanted to like put some of myself into the project, you know? Like, theoretically, anyone could reproduce the moves and inputs that I'm doing, but, a bit harder to replicate that.
You give it the soul.
Yeah. Okay, well, I cannot believe we talked through the entire video, but talk we did, and it was amazing and great. So thanks for joining me again on this Q&A. We complete 3-12 in Or sorry, gosh, 3-7 in 12 turns. That's the one.
Yeah, 312 is coming up, and well, not yet, of course, but that is a chapter.
Yeah,
It is one of the chapters of all time.
It's its own can of worms.
Yes. I'm assuming I'll be back at some point when there's more Q&As to go by, and when there's a few questions that you don't necessarily know the answer to. At least I hope I'll be a welcome addition to another video at some point. But for now, thank you for having me, and it's been a blast. And I actually also can't believe we managed to fill the entire video just with us talking. It's been great.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to like edit this down. It's awesome. Anyway, to officially outro this whole thing, join me next time to see how completing our side objectives helps us complete the next chapter more cleanly. Take care, everyone. Oh.